Today's episode is brought to you by Create Engage, the digital marketing agency for the disruptive management consultancy. Digital marketing has moved forwards, but most consulting firms haven't. Many consulting firms still see their corporate blog as their sole digital marketing channel and find themselves frustrated when these blogs yield little, if any, results. For those consultancies that understand digital marketing, though, it can be a huge asset and help them achieve rapid business growth. In fact, at Create Engage, we've recently written a case study of one successful consulting firm that used digital marketing to help them grow over 400% in just 3 years. Having spent countless hours researching consulting firms and consulting leaders for this podcast, it became very clear that while some firms do digital marketing well, the vast majority of consulting firms struggle to leverage its power and don't know where to start. To help those of you who want to harness the power of digital marketing to grow your consulting business, but don't have the knowledge, capacity, or in-house capability to do so, I launched Create Engage, the first digital marketing agency for the management consulting industry. As former consultants ourselves, we understand the challenges that you face when it comes to delivering effective digital marketing that engages prospective clients and generates leads. Having worked in the industry, we understand consulting buyers, what resonates with them and what doesn't. This enables us to harness the latest in digital marketing in a way that aligns with your brand and your market positioning to attract the prospective clients that you're looking to target. We understand that each consultancy is unique and have a range of services to help you shape, implement, and sustain effective digital marketing strategies that deliver results, regardless of where you are on your digital marketing journey. If you would like to find out more about how Create Engage can help you use digital marketing to take your business to the next level, then send me an email at nick@createengage.co.uk or go to our website, createengage.co.uk, where you can download that free case study that breaks down the digital marketing strategies used by one successful consulting firm to help them grow over 400% in just 3 years and gives you the secrets they used so that you can apply them in your own firm. If you want to outpace your competitors and stand out in the crowded consulting market, then get in touch. We'd love to help you grow your business through digital marketing. Hi, and welcome to Climbing Consulting. In today's episode, I speak to Chris Gibson, partner and managing director at Penn. Penn are a client of ours here at Create Engage, and having got to know Chris and the Penn team over the last 6 months, I knew that he would make a great guest for the show. Penn are a really unique consultancy, and I'm not just saying that because we work with them. Penn was founded by a collective of consultants striving to solve many of the problems that they saw in the traditional consulting model, something that we go into detail on in today's show. Having launched the business in 2012, Chris and the team have gone from strength to strength, successfully growing Penn from just the founding team into a consultancy that regularly has more than 100 consultants supporting clients at any one time. While I've got to know Chris well over the last 6 months, it was great to have a chance to sit down with him and find out more about his personal journey, learn about the Penn story, and hear about those pieces that I didn't know. In today's conversation, we cover a whole host of topics, including what led Chris and his fellow partners to launch Penn, and how they've approached the growth of the business over those last 8 years to ensure they're able to stay in their sweet spot, both for the team and their clients. The importance of culture and what you need to focus on to develop and maintain a culture you can be proud of. And Chris's candid perspective on the pros and cons of joining a smaller consultancy, how they're not right for everybody, and what you need to think about if you're considering making the leap. I really enjoyed this conversation with Chris, and it was great to find out more about the journey that both he and Penn have been on. Penn don't shout loudly about it, but their success speaks for itself, from their awards for excellence in well-being through to their successful startup Adventures business. Whether you're looking for insights on how to grow your own consulting firm, or you're earlier in your career and you're trying to decide whether you should make the move to a smaller firm like Penn, then I know you're going to get a ton from today's conversation. So, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Chris Gibson. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick. Nice to be here.
So really looking forward to this one. Obviously, I know quite a bit of the Penn journey, given that we work together.
Yeah.
But as with all of these things, I'm sure there's lots I don't know. And obviously, for my listeners, there'll be many people out there who may not have come across yourselves before. So I think there's much to share with me and help my learning as it is to theirs. And almost to exactly that, maybe for those who don't know you so well, it'd be great to just start with a brief overview of your background and how you got to where you are today.
Let's do that. Before we start, though, I've got something for you. I've bought you a present.
This is a first.
Is this a first on your podcast?
This is a first on my podcast, and as I said earlier, we're testing video. So, what have you got me?
Well, I know you're a rugby fan. Because the first time I met you, you were about to go to Japan to watch the World Cup, and there's a big rugby match coming up between England and Ireland. I thought I would buy you something to
Chris. That is fantastic.
Wear on the day. So if I don't see a photograph of you wearing an Irish rugby jersey,
thank you very much. So
on the day, I'll be very upset.
So for those listening, Chris has very kindly bought me an Ireland jersey. Thank you so much. It's, I will wear that. That will be your victory for the day. I don't think the game will go your way, but thank you very much.
I think you might be right.
Oh, thank you very much, Chris. Well, that is an exceptional start, and a note to all other guests for future episodes. Greatly received.
Well, hopefully I've started a trend for you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Well,
so you wanted to hear about my career, my background in consulting.
Yeah. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, I've spent my whole career in consulting. Actually, I said that to a client recently, one of my favorite clients the other day, and she said, "Oh, you were born in captivity." Yeah, so I made a decision from university to join a consulting business, and I did a 4-year degree up in Edinburgh University. I did a business master's degree, and one of the big benefits of doing a 4-year degree was that a lot of my friends were in England, and they spent 3 years studying, so they'd tackled the job market before I got to it. And I got a bit of advice from a friend of mine who joined a consulting business, and he said, "I've got a tip for you. There's this great course that one of the big 4 consulting firms offers called the Experience in Consulting." It was Pricewaterhouse. And he said, even if you don't want to join consulting, it's a 3-day course. They take you down to London. They buy you nice meals. There's lots of drinks. You'll meet a lot of interesting people, and actually you'll learn a lot about consulting. So I headed back to Edinburgh and found this course. This is before the days of the internet, so I had to write to them and find out about this course. And I got on it, and I headed down to London, and I spent 3 days in an excellently managed course, a great environment, run by consultants who'd given up their weekend with, I don't know, there was 20, 25 of us who went through this experience in consulting, and it was a structured process to take us through the different disciplines in consulting and tell us a bit about what it was all about. So I had a smashing time, met a lot of good people, and I was just overwhelmed by the drive and positivity of everybody that I met that was in consulting. And I went back to Edinburgh thinking, right, okay, that's for me. So I planned out who to apply for and applied for lots of different consultancies, and I actually ended up joining PricewaterhouseCoopers. So they merged with Coopers and Lybrand before I got a chance to join. And I spent the first 5 years of my career in a big consultancy business. I worked in financial services projects, mostly on large-scale systems integration style stuff. And I found a bit of a niche for myself as a stepping stone between the business and the systems work. I quickly worked out that I wasn't a developer, or I couldn't design programs very well. But I found myself partway between the business and the IT, the world of IT. And I really enjoyed that. But about 5 years in, once I'd worked out what consulting was all about, it started to dawn on me, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, but it started to dawn on me that maybe delivering consulting in a large-scale firm wasn't the best way to drive value for clients. So I started looking for a small business that was specializing in the area I was working in, which was financial services. And I came across a business called Troika, which at the time was a very well-known niche consulting business that worked in FS. I looked on their website, and I was lucky enough that someone I had worked with previously worked there, and I dropped them a line, and I ended up getting an interview and joining that business. And that was the second chapter of my career, really. And as soon as I arrived there, even within the first month, I realized, my eyes were open. I thought, right, I'm in the right place here. My learning curve went exponential. I had so much exposure to senior clients and to senior members of the business. I was seeing projects from end to end. I could get my head around the business. I knew everybody there. I knew what the strategy was. I knew about the financials, and I could see how things that I were doing was actually impacting the business as well. And I had a great time there. That business, Troika, was then sold to a big American firm called Navigant at the time, which I think is now called Guidehouse. And I ended up running their banking business in the UK, and we became their UK financial services consulting business. And I enjoyed that for, another 5-7 years, and I had a great time there. And I kind of got involved in the American side of the business and was on their leadership training course, and I kind of had a good time. But one day I woke up and realized, hold on, I'm in a big consulting firm here again, and a lot of the pressures and strains that I had seen in my Big Four career had found their way back into my life again. And I realized I wanted to get back to how I thought consulting should be done. So with a group of like-minded souls, we started Penn, and that was 7.5, 8 years ago now, and we haven't looked back since.
Fantastic, and tons in there, Chris, to dive into. We'll definitely spend a good chunk of time on Penn and the journey, because I think there's some really unique elements of your model, and both the origin story that we'll save for shortly, but also just how you've grown the firm and the philosophy that underpins it. And actually, I'm interested in that point, and maybe we start there, of that decision to leave the Big Four, because you mentioned around it was those pressures and strains, and almost you had that sort of, you woke up at that point in Navigant, and it had become that as well. Almost, what were those pressures and strains that made you decide, actually, no, I think I should go and look elsewhere?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of benefits to the Big Four, and I had a fantastic time there, and it is a genuinely brilliant place to start your career. They wrote the book on training. I remember when I first joined as a graduate, my first 3 months, I was taken to Tampa in Florida. I spent 3 months training on all the different facets of how to be a consultant. We were learning how to do big systems integration work at the time. So it was, how do you do requirements gathering and analysis and design and testing? And, I learned a lot there that I've taken through my whole career. And you also get exposure to big, exciting projects that you might not see in smaller businesses. And you've got the brand behind you, as you progress more in your career, and selling to clients becomes a big driver. Having that brand behind you is a massive benefit. And there's the support network of the marketing team and the knowledge management team and the white paper production team that you don't have in a small business. But, well, I guess I found myself in a position too many times where I was working on a client project, and I was thinking, if I'd done this before, I'd be able to do this much better. And I'm a good consultant. I can follow a process, I can solve problems, and I can get through this. But actually, if this wasn't the first time I was doing it, I'd be much better at this. And I also find myself working in small slices of projects rather than seeing the journey end to end. And there were a few times, and it happened again and again, I was thinking, actually, if I'd been involved in the design of this solution, now that I'm testing it, I would have done this differently. And now I'm seeing the issues we're getting in testing. If I could go back and design a solution like this again, I'd take a different route. And also I found that I wasn't getting exposure to either the senior members of the business or the senior clients that I wanted. Often I was on programs that I had 3 or 4 layers between me and anyone in the client that was a decision maker. And so I think the benefit of delivering consultancy in a small environment, the other thing I should say is I wanted to specialize. And at the time, I was being forced into an industry agnostic resource pool, whereas I'd always spent time on financial services projects, and I thought there was value in that, and I didn't want to lose that. And I wanted to work for a business that specialized in something in particular, and I wanted to stay in financial services. And that's why I went looking elsewhere. And
we'll come on to actually how you've used those underpinnings almost to build the business you have with with your fellow partners, because I think it's interesting hearing some of that and knowing some of the Penn story, because I'm sure you'll be able to tell me more, but quite a few of those elements are almost one of the guiding principles, as I understand it, for you and the founding team, is to be able to give people some of those benefits that you can't get, that made you leave the big firms, so that you can build that firm you wanted and have that environment, and we'll come on to culture as well. But why don't we actually jump fast forward to Penn? Because I think the origin story of the business is quite interesting, and particularly, and you can tell me, the other parts that for you and the team were sort of the poignant elements. But for me, the bit that sticks out is the number of founders, because I've had a number of guests on the show where the founders have been 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 people. But for yourselves, it was 9 of you who founded the business, which is, frankly, I think quite unusual in our industry. And I'd be really interested, actually, what was it that brought the 9 of you together, and how did you decide it was the 9 of you and not the 4, 5, or actually at the other end, the 10, 11 or 12?
Yeah, I think we were very lucky to start with 9, and in particular, very lucky to start with those particular 9. You need a bit of luck in business.
Yeah.
And we found a team that worked really well, probably the highest performing team I've ever been involved with. So it was 9 people, not all of which knew each other previously, but most of us had worked together at some time. We weren't all working together at the same time, so it wasn't as if we all stood up and walked out of a business in one go. But many of us had known each other for 15 years. And I guess we were all having that same realization that we'd find ourselves in situations where we were back in the big organization, being pulled out of shape in terms of how we thought consultancy should be delivered. And so there were little pockets of conversations going on between those characters. But there was one person, a very impressive guy called Richard Vail, who's got to take a lot of credit for starting Penn. He struck the flint that lit the fire that is Penn, and organized the conversations and started the ball rolling. And 2 or 3 of us said, yeah, I'm in, let's go, let's get this started. And very quickly it was 4 or 5, and we got 9 people committed within a very short space of time, a short number of months. And we said, right, okay, there was no one else on the horizon. There were a few disparate conversations going on whether a couple of other people might want to join. But we said, right, okay, that's it. We've got enough. We're good to go now. And yeah, looking back at it now, those were exciting times, particularly the moment when we said, right, okay, we've started a business. Well done us. Right. What happens next?
and I do want to come on to the what happens next. I guess I didn't quite appreciate that it was more of a disparate group as you paint than it was sort of, I guess I was almost under the impression there was almost like you said, you'd all come from one place or one team. And I guess, how did those conversations snowball, if you like? Was it that Richard spoke to, 3 of you who all said, oh, I've spoken to one other person who might be interested in this? Was it that organic? Was there more of you mentioned critical management, we need a certain number to go? How did those early conversations start?
Yeah, well, it was fascinating. I guess Richard was kind of pushing things along on a number of fronts, and people were starting to talk to each other, and there were kind of conversations around the coffee machine in particular organizations where there was kind of knowing glances, and it just happened organically from there.
There must have been a point where you all came together as a group and said, we're going to do this. And actually, what did you do to get comfortable with each other? Because ultimately you're trusting your livelihood and your mortgage and your sort of your family's income to these other people who, by the sounds of it, you didn't know them all. Some of them would have been, I guess, strangers. Almost. How did you?
Well, I might be overplaying that bit.
Okay.
We weren't all working. What I was trying to say was we weren't all working together at the same time in the same organization. So most of us, although not everybody, had worked together at some point in our careers. So it wasn't as if it was a bunch of strangers. So the getting to know you bit wasn't the difficult bit.
Okay. What was the difficult bit?
So the difficult bit in the origin story was, I wouldn't say there's just challenges in starting a business. Nothing at the time felt insurmountable at all, but we knew we had to get ourselves busy. We knew we had to recruit a team and get them busy. And we knew we needed to start to build the structure of the business. And we found out very quickly that the team worked brilliantly together, and we all found our different area that we were able to contribute to. And it, as I say, it worked very organically right from the start.
So, like you say, it's obviously worked very well for you, and the firm is here now because of it. I guess I'm interested, and it's something I know we spoke about a little before recording this, of almost actually your role, if you like, and how you became managing director. Because I guess one thing that some people listening might think is, well, if you've got 9 of you and you're trying to do everything in a partner meeting, particularly at those early days when, as a business, you're going to be reacting to a lot of things. Almost, how did that side of the growth journey evolve? And actually, what was it that led to you and the rest of the partnership deciding we do need a managing director and it should be yourself? Was that something that came up quite early? Was that organic? Where did that come from?
No, we actually very deliberately decided that we didn't want to have a managing partner in the early days, that it was a team of peers and we were all contributing equally to the business. And that worked brilliantly. And we all sweated the detail of everything, and we felt passionately about what we were doing. Kind of everybody was involved in everything. It was and still is a great experience. But it did come a point a few years in where we said, right, listen, we can't manage everything by committee. We've got to play to our strengths here. So we need to leave some people to go and do sales, some people to worry about the people side of the business or whatever it might be. And we said, right, we need someone to be the managing director of the business, or someone that is, responsible for managing the team, responsible for setting the strategy, setting the plan, and making sure we deliver to that plan. And most importantly, making sure we've got the environment for our team to have the support they need to develop and do what we want to do in the business. And it's not a position that is above the rest of the partner group, of which there are more than 9 now, so that partner group has grown over time, and we've taken people that have been promoted up through the business and also have joined us from outside, which adds another new dynamic as well, which is great and exciting. And the company keeps developing. But the managing director role, I see it as a way I can serve the partner group, and the way that I can do my bit to make sure that Penn runs in the right way. And I'm very proud and happy to be doing it. In terms of deciding who it was going to be, we had an arm wrestle. No, I think it just fell naturally. We kind of had the conversation, and we decided it would just happen naturally that it should be me, and that worked well.
And we're here recording the interview because of it. So I'm glad it did, Chris. And I don't think I would have got such a generous gift if it hadn't. So I'm glad it worked out like that. And I guess, and as I said, I know I warned you at the start, we'll jump a little around the chronology, but with that being a few years in, I guess I'm quite interested in those early conversations about that approach, and particularly that approach to almost the direction you take the business in, because I've had plenty of people on this show who have started a consulting firm to sell. I've had others who are building firms to grow into global firms. I've had others who are building firms to a certain size and the size of business they want. And how did you, in those early days, and if it was it was more just because of the people you brought on, you all had that shared philosophy, it might be a shorter question, but what was that driving principle, and how did you get everyone aligned on that direction that you were going to take Penn in, and the way you were going to grow the business in those early days?
Well, it started from what did we want to build, and fundamentally we wanted to build a business, a consultancy business that was brilliant and valuable and exciting and fun for both the clients we do work for and the people inside it. So we wanted to focus on delivering great stuff for our clients first and foremost. And that means you need to specialize, because I think the value in consulting comes from having done it before and having solved the same problems for clients in the past, but also doing it in a different way, doing it in a personable way, a human side to consulting, working with client teams in a way that they enjoy as well, working in small teams, doing big things, so we wanted to actively avoid the land and expand model. The model at Penn is very much get in, get the job done, and get out. And that when the client needs help the next time, they'll phone you because they had a great experience and got a great outcome from the project. So that was the basic premise of everything. But of course, that can come in different shapes and sizes and directions. And first of all, we spent a lot of time together. And I'm talking the entire business. So we obviously recruited people pretty quickly at the start. And we spent a lot of time together, and we still do as a company, dealing with these points and dealing with these issues and making sure that people understand exactly where we're going. But I remember one of the early meetings right at the start of the business, one thing we did was we all we all drew a picture of what we wanted to see Penn like in 10 years' time. The pictures looked very different. Some of them looked like they were written in Sanskrit, and some of them were artistically brilliant. But they all said very similar things whenever you dug into it, and those were the points I just made about how we want to do consulting. So the mission that we've set out on is to deliver great outcomes for our clients, build a great company that we all want to work in for a long, long time to come, to give something back to other people that need it more than ourselves, and to have a lot of fun along the way. And that, as the central premise to what we're doing, has worked very well. But you mentioned growth, and then where you want to take the business. That's another major question, right? So you can do a lot of the things I've just mentioned in different speeds, can't you? At Penn, we want to follow a sensible growth trajectory. So, in the market, as you say, you often see businesses that are setting up to grow quickly and sell for the highest possible price. And in doing that, I see companies quite often get into their sweet spot quickly. So the point at which they've got great relationships with clients, they're delivering great work, they've got a really high quality team, the brand is building value, and they're doing really well. They're having a lot of fun doing it. But I often see those companies then sailing straight past that sweet spot, pushing for that annual growth figure, that exponential growth, to try and build the value of the business. And in doing that, they do a few different things. So they need to recruit people quickly, so they drop the quality bar of their team. They start taking on work that they're not necessarily qualified to do. So they start getting into trouble on projects, which gets into difficulty with clients and damages the brand. So we've always said at Penn, let's grow at a sensible pace. We're privately owned. We own the business, so there's no outside shareholder or stakeholder demanding 30% growth next year. We can grow at a level that we're happy with, where we can maintain the quality bar of our team. We need to make sure that the team is as of the highest possible quality and never let that drop. We can take on work only that we know how to deliver, and one of our biggest sales tools is saying no to work. And often clients will come to us and say, listen, I trust you guys. I know you'll do a good job. Can you help me with this? There's always a little bit in consulting of, we've not quite done that before, but I know we can deal with that for you. So there's always a little bit of pushing the envelope. But when you really should not be doing that work, saying no to the client and saying, listen, this isn't us. We'll help you work out what the approach is. We'll help you find someone who should be helping you with this. And if need be, we'll manage them or whatever it might be. But actually, this isn't a fit for Penn. And I think if we stick to those points, we'll do just fine.
And it's a really interesting point you make around that, how some of those challenges can come up if you try and grow too fast. And actually, how do you keep on top of those? It's obviously an ever-present risk you've highlighted there. How do you and the partnership make sure that you're in that sweet spot and growing at the rate that you and the team want to, but you're not at risk of, like you say, sort of sailing past or going beyond that?
Well, we spend a lot of time thinking about getting our project teams right for client work. And we think about three things with that. So we talk about the content area. So the first thing you need is a group of people that understand the content area, the product set, the operations, the systems that the client is dealing with. The second one is you need a project team that have solved the problem or a similar problem in the past. And they also need to have delivered the process that brings that solution live. And I think if you've got all three of those things, then it's much easier to deliver a great outcome for the client, because you get into the conversations like, we've done this before. The last 5 or 6 times we've done this, we've taken this route on the solution, and we find that's the right way to do it. So we could spend 3 weeks analyzing the problem, but we've got empirical evidence that tells us that's the right way to go. So we can save a lot of time and head in that direction. Or you can say, we need to tackle this area now, because when we've delivered this solution in the past, we know it is difficult to define that particular part of the solution or deliver that part of the solution. So we need to prioritize that. And you can add value to clients much quicker if you've got those three elements on a project team. So we are strict about making sure we've got the right team on projects.
And I think that brings us quite nicely actually to something that I certainly think is quite unique in your model around the way you balance your team to do that, because you've got a core team here of permanent members of the team, but you've obviously also got quite a strong associate base, which I guess is in part to like you say, that content specialist element of the mix. But I'd be really interested in almost how you decided on that business model, and it might be for all of the reasons you just explained there, how you decided on that mix of associates and permanents, and almost the benefits that you find for both yourselves and your clients in using that model.
Yeah, it was a very deliberate part of the strategy. That it was something that we set out on right from the start to build a strong associate network. And we do that for three reasons. First of all, what we've just talked about, access to deep subject matter expertise that it's not cost effective for us to have in our core team, so that we couldn't keep that type of skill set busy on a regular basis. But we can pull on that expertise whenever we need it to get the right answer for a project team. Secondly, it helps us punch above our weight. So we've got a team of over 40 now, but we've worked with up to 60 associates in the market at any one time. We have blended teams out there. We've got a good mix of the core team and our associate network, which helps us staff a wider array of projects. And also it helps us keep our cost base flexible, which was always a big tenet of what we wanted to do at Penn. Part of the issues that we talked about earlier in delivering consultancy in a big firm model is there's a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah.
So utilization and rates becomes the big factor. You get pushed on that too much, and that pulls you out of shape, and you get forced into that land and expand model, and you find yourself having conversations with a client that you really don't want to be having, trying to persuade them to buy more and put more people on the project, when actually you should just stick to the job you've been asked to do, get in, get the job done, and get out. So by keeping our cost base flexible, we avoid those pressures, and by growing at our own pace, we avoid those pressures, and it means that we can keep in control of that culture that we want to build. And also it works for the associates. So a lot of the associates that are in our network and work with us again and again have something else going on in their life. So they're often a bit later in their career. They've done their last big job, and they're now renovating a holiday house on the south coast or something like that, or running a property development business or whatever it might be, and they want to dip into consulting projects when it's appropriate for them, when there's a really interesting challenge that they've got something to contribute to. So it works for them as well as it works for us, and it's been very successful for us.
I'll come back to the cost base, because I think there's some really interesting learnings in there, but I guess it's that associate point is really key in terms of actually, what you said around it works well for them, and also it's about the skill sets. What I'm inferring from what you're saying, Chris, is it's not simply just Joe Blogg's day rate PM that was in a contract role before and is now an associate. For you, it's that associate specialist who, like you say, you don't have a direct need for day in, day out, but you have a client need for in specific projects, and actually that win-win helps them as well, because they don't want that full-time role. They want to be doing the property development or the house in the south of. So did you say the south coast here or the south of France, or have you got both? You probably
let's go for France. That sounds better. Yeah, you're right. And also the associates, they've chosen that way to live their life and work their career because they like to pick and choose the projects they're on. Which is different from a member of the core team. We do spend a lot of time making sure the right people end up on the right projects, both to make sure we got the right project team to deliver the best outcome for the client, but also for the career development of that person. The development and support of people's careers is a big part of Penn, and getting people onto the right projects in the right roles is a big part of that, obviously. But you can't get away from the fact that in a small business, it's us against the rest of the world. We celebrate when we win a piece of business, and that's big news for us, but it's got to be delivered, and it may not be the sexiest piece of work, and it might not be in the sexiest location, but it's got to get done, and that's kind of a part of real life. 9 times out of 10 you will be on work that excites you and on the role that is best for you, but sometimes it isn't. But we're all on a mission to build the business, and that's part of the job.
Well, and I guess must be another benefit of that associate network of almost, if you do have that extra resource and that specialist resource, the chances of one of your core team having to be put on a role that maybe is not quite right for them, like you say, it's a fact of life. Not every role is going to be the one you want, but if you have an associate who is a specialist in, I don't know, supply chain logistics, and that's the project that you need staffing, actually it's much easier to fill that capacity with that associate. Whereas in firms maybe where they don't have that pool, if it's got to be one of your core team, it's got to be one of your core team. I'm interested in the point you mentioned around the cost side and the benefits it brings there. Because obviously, like you said, growing a consulting business, the challenge that can come sometimes is if you're growing fast, you're bringing headcount on, or you're bringing cost on. If the market changes, and when we're recording this just at the start of 2020, we haven't seen a significant downturn for 10 plus years now, and obviously everyone knows sort of what the last one was. But actually, those sort of dips in the market can really hurt if you're not prepared for them. And I'm interested in, and it might have been something that you drew on those pictures, and I want to come back to that if we have time, because I love the idea around. How have you structured those elements to almost minimize that cost and that risk to you and the team while being able to grow the business in the way that you want?
By being sensible. So first of all, the associate model has a lot to do with that. So we're able to flex up and down on the size of the business depending on the market conditions. That it insulates the core team from external impacts. So the revenue in any one year would have to be severely impacted before anyone in the core team would be impacted. But managing the cost base is important. So, for example, we've adopted very modern business practices and built the company in a flexible way. So our office, for example, you're sitting in our office at the moment. We have a dedicated office which only holds, maybe 10, 12 people, because 90% of the time, there's very few people in the office. A good consulting office is an empty one, as they say. So we don't have a lot of people at base camp, but if we're all there, there's nearly 45 of us there, and that happens quite often. So we needed a solution that gave us both of those. So we have a small permanent office, but that is inside a managed working space. So when we have everybody here, there's touchdown desks that people can use. So that's a good example of keeping the cost flexible, but also, we have outsourced our IT and our HR and our legal, and we've just been sensible in that.
And was that something that, well, I guess the question is, where did that come from? Was that something that you or others in the team had seen work well in previous businesses? Was it something that you came together as a group during the journey? Was there a point, or what was it that led you to build the business in that way to let you have, like you say, that flexibility and obviously the benefits that have come from it?
I'm not sure it's something that we'd seen before, but I was always, I guess we were all very mindful of this. We wanted to build a business that allowed us to grow at our own pace, to deliver great stuff for clients, say no to work we can't do, and not worry about utilization and rates all the time. So one of the ways to allow that to happen, to enable that scenario, is to manage your cost base well, so that you don't have a swollen operating cost every month that you need to pay. And that has worked well.
And it's interesting for others who are either, so a lot of listeners to the show are people who are looking to start their own consulting business. And I think, as you say, the Penn model is almost testament to that fact that you can build a large and successful consulting firm with those flexible elements. And I think the key thing that I'm taking from what you're saying is it's not that you're foregoing having, like you said, HR, finance, in our case, marketing. You've got the functions that any large consulting firm would have, but you're doing it in such a way that you're not committing to a large sunk cost that, like you highlight, could impact if there was a downturn. The way we want to do business.
Exactly.
And I think it's a fascinating point, actually, because that the unintended consequences, as you highlighted, of almost, if you make some of these decisions, it does change how you have to do business by virtue of how you have to do business to fund I guess it's the same as personal lifestyle, isn't it? If suddenly you have to have an HR function and a marketing function and a finance function in-house and a big office, you have to
behave in a certain way to fund that.
Yeah, well, exactly. And that then causes, like you say, to sort of restrict some of those, the way you want to run the firm. And I think that brings us quite nicely on to almost the how you run it and how you run it for your people. Because I think this is something that I know you put a lot of effort and time into as a firm. And obviously recently been announced as a Great Place to Work Centre of Excellence in Wellbeing, which is no small thing. And I think, did you say there's only 23 firms in the world that have got that award this year? Was that? I might need to fact check.
I think there were, we need to check that one. I think there were 23 firms that had participated in the Great Places to Work survey that were awarded a Centre of Excellence in Wellbeing. There we go.
That was
well. I'm really proud of that. Because it sums up very well the core of Penn. We talked about what we want to be, but the culture within that is all about, we call it the Penn family, and making sure that we build the environment that gives people what they need, gives them the support they need to do what they want to do in their life, and that means giving them the work that they want to do. That means giving them the time to enjoy it with their family and their friends. That means giving them the opportunity to get involved in entrepreneurial activities. We have a ventures business as well, where we set up and invest in other organizations, which the team get a lot of benefit from being involved in as well. And then some frivolous fun as well. Life's too short not to enjoy your life in work. So actually we talk about, it's a very professional organization, but we talked about relaxed professionalism. Being professional doesn't mean that you can't smile and laugh at work or have some fun. So the culture of Penn is all about making sure that the support network is there for people to be able to do the work they want to do, to develop, to manage their career the way they want to manage it.
On that culture piece, because like you say, the things you have built are obviously a testament to, the awards is obviously a testament to those things you've built. I'm interested at, particularly as the firm's grown, and maybe actually, and you tell me again of almost, I don't know if this was a challenge as the firm sort of started in those early days, but actually, as you've grown, how have you maintained that culture? Because I think, and many guests have talked about, as you grow, things change and you have to do things differently to almost keep those values the same. But how here for yourselves at Penn have you, I guess, either at the start codified, what you want? You mentioned around those pitches, so maybe that was the start of that sort of cultural conversation. But how have you kept those core tenets as the firm have grown, as new partners have joined, as new team members have joined? And almost, were there any challenges along that way where you did have to take stock and do anything different to keep things the same, as it were?
Yeah, I think the first, it's just important to set the direction really clearly. And I don't think that means necessarily writing everything down in a very codified way, because I think it's very difficult to capture a culture in words in a booklet that you can hand to someone and say, right, that's the culture you've got to live. That's the way it works around here. Yeah. I think if we did that, that would, kind of break one of our first rules, which is, don't be too bureaucratic. Don't be too codified. Give people the space and time to work on what's important, either in their development, on client work, developing the business, or on our charitable stuff or our adventures. So I would say, first point is set the direction and so agreeing early doors how we want to run things. Then living that. And so we were quite lucky where we had 9 people that started with. That's quite a big group. And because we were all marching in the right direction, we could recruit around that, and everybody started moving in the right direction as well, as long as everybody is living it. So I think we were able to build that culture even as we grew quite quickly in the early days. And I think calling it out, as I said earlier, calling out issues. And some are small, really small points. Some are really big points, but facing into them and tackling them and sitting down and have an honest, growing up, adult conversation to pull someone up on the way they are behaving that isn't acceptable or isn't right, and it may not be a conscious thing, So they just need a nudge in the right direction. So it's not about codifying it in the sense of writing it down, but it's been, really crystal clear in the minds of the people involved right at the start, making sure everyone's going in the same direction and living it, and then dealing with it when someone isn't living with the same values.
So something you said in there, Chris, around, like you say, if you're a firm of two and you add two more, that you've increased the firm, or you've diluted the culture by 100%. You need to do certain things to manage that. I guess I'm really interested how you and the team here have managed that, in that, okay, you started with a larger number in the core team, but that team's grown significantly over the time that you've all been working together. And actually how you continue to embed that culture when, let's say, when there was 9 and then you turn that into 18, everyone in the team had someone they could almost man mark. Now you're bigger, that can't happen. What are some of those things that either you do now or you've done along that journey to ensure that culture sustains and keeps in the way that you set out at the start?
It's a difficult one, and I don't have all the answers. And that is something, it's one of our biggest challenges over the next few years as we grow past that kind of 50-person mark. I think is a big milestone. But yeah, it's not 9 partners anymore. We've got 13 partners in the business, and we hope to be growing that more in the near future. And every one of those partners is contributing in a valuable way to the business in their own way. And we just make it very clear that one of the ways in which you need to contribute to the business is to maintain and build the culture. It's a very flat firm, so we try not to be hierarchical. So it is very, very common and the norm really for some of the most inexperienced members of the team to be working with the most experienced members of the team on a day-to-day basis. And I think that shape is really helpful on the cultural side, because you can live the values with the team on a day-to-day basis. There's very little of the style of kind of management that I saw in bigger consulting firms, which is they rock in at the end of the day. Okay, we need a presentation that does this, this, and this. I'll be back in tomorrow morning and we'll go through it. At Penn, it's much more, right, here's the problem we've got to solve. Here's the situation we've got to deal with. Let's get in a room, roll our sleeves up, and let's deal with it together. And in doing that, you can demonstrate the values. We talk about the Penn family a lot, and part of the big part of that is support. So I really enjoy being in a business, leading a business where support is one of the main tenets. And new recruits, new people that have come into the business often say that to me. That the biggest difference I see is that everybody's pulling in the same direction. And if you send an email out saying I need help with this, or I need an example of this, or has anybody got a good model for this, you will get a lot of response to that. And everybody knows that the support's there, and that's the kind of the biggest part of the culture, I think.
And you mentioned it, and I know it was something you touched on earlier about actually the reason you left the bigger firms. I think it's a really interesting point for anyone listening who's thinking of moving, because most people can name all 4 of the big 4 and have a reasonable idea of what they do and the sort of the early career path that you get there. I think for many people, the next challenge comes when you're looking to move firm. And actually, for anyone listening who is at that stage, I guess where you were, who was thinking, do I leave a PwC? Do I go and join a Deloitte, KPMG, or do I take a chance with a smaller firm? Do I join somewhere like a Penn? Actually, when you're having these conversations with candidates or new recruits, what are some of those almost benefits that they could potentially get from that smaller firm? And also, if there are some, what are some of those drawbacks or things that people really need to consider before making the leap to join a smaller firm?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's a big move, I would say. So moving from a big firm, big consultancy firm, to a smaller business needs to be carefully considered. It doesn't work for everybody. So I think the benefits are the exposure. So you will get much more exposure to the senior team in the small firm, but also to senior clients that we're working with. We don't have a massive team, so everybody needs to be comfortable in front of senior clients and operating in that environment, and you will get the opportunity to do that from day one. There's no hiding from that. I think that's one of the reasons why the speed of learning and development is so much quicker, because of that exposure. Working with the senior team in a small firm, you get the opportunity to see how they operate. You get the opportunity to take it all in and see every aspect of the work, whether it's business development, writing proposals, closing work, kicking off projects, managing project, the full gambit, and you see the right way, what good looks like very quickly. There's less bureaucracy. So certainly at Penn, we set out intentionally to build a business that didn't have needless bureaucracy involved in it. So we spent a lot of time to make sure that our processes and our systems are as slick as possible, so people don't spend needless time claiming expenses, doing time reports. The way we do staff development and feedback and reviews is done in a really caring, supportive, important way, but it isn't about filling out loads of forms. And I remember the annual review process when I worked in big firms. It just seemed endless, and there was so much to do. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm just taking a box here. I'm not really helping develop the career of the 23 people I was writing reviews for. So less bureaucracy, which gives you more time to focus on the things that are important to you. We've talked about support a lot, so I don't want to keep emphasizing that. But there's everybody in the business. You know where to go to for the help that you need, and it's easy to access, and people are keen to give it. And all that adds up to an environment in which you can develop, you can do the job that you want to, and you've got time to focus on what you want to. You also get exposure to how the business runs. So we're very open at Penn about the financials of the business and how performance is going and where we are against the plan that we've set. And people know, they can see how their actions impact the performance of the business. And I think that direct correlation is really important. I remember working in big firms. It seemed to happen every year when it came to bonus time. There'd be a message, listen, we've done really well, and our practice has done brilliantly, and the UK's done brilliantly, but Azerbaijan's done really badly this year, so I'm afraid there's no bonus to share. There's none of that in a small firm. Your actions, there's nothing I could do about Azerbaijan having a bad year. I couldn't influence that, but I was getting directly impacted. We're in a small firm. Your actions really contribute to the performance of the business. And you get to build the business, which I think is a massive benefit. So you've got 3 responsibilities, certainly at Penn. You need to deliver great client work, but you also need to develop business as well. But lastly, you need to contribute internally to the building of the business. So part of our mission is to build a fantastic business we want to work in for many years to come, and that's everybody's responsibility. So if you're into building websites, get involved in making the website better. If you're into recruitment, then get involved in recruitment. If you're into operations and IT, get involved in that. If marketing's your thing, then get involved in that, and you get to build a part of the business. And then I know we're talking about small firms in general. Just a point to make about Penn is that everybody at Penn owns part of the business. We have an employee ownership scheme, which we probably don't make enough of. We don't shout about that enough,
I'll
actually.
be completely honest, Chris. I did not appreciate that there was I know when you say everyone, the entire firm, not just the partnership. So I didn't know that.
So everybody at Penn owns part of Penn. So they're building their own business. We are building our own business together, and that's a big thing. But there's drawbacks as well, and that's why I think it's a big decision for someone to leave a big established organization to come to a small business. And first of all, there's nowhere to hide. So it's not for everyone in that extent. So if you have areas of your consulting life that aren't as developed as some, that will be exposed. Now that happens in Penn in a very supportive and helpful way, but that might not be the same in all small firms. It can be hard to impress. So in my view, the quality bar is a lot higher. And coming from a big firm where you might have got a pat on the back for doing something pretty standard, that's not going to cut the mustard, certainly at Penn. So because the quality bar is so high, but there's less structure as well. So many people would take that as a positive side of things, but the internal processes are less well documented. There is less direction on things. There isn't a training course. There's plenty of training, but not in the way that in year 1 you go on this course, on year 2 you go on this course. At Penn, you need to drive that yourself. You need to say, to help my career and take me in the direction I want to go, I'd really love to go on this type of course, and we'll help you do that. But you got to have that drive yourself, and the support around things like knowledge management or proposal writing or thought leadership, that doesn't exist. We do that all ourselves. So if you don't thrive, in an environment which might not be as structured as you're used to, then that is a tricky thing. And then the big one, particularly for people that are involved in business development, is that we don't have an established brand. So although the Penn brand is growing and is getting out there more and is well established in certain areas, it doesn't open doors the way the big consulting organizations can with their brand. And that's a big drawback. So, we often talk to people who are coming from big organizations and have sold £10 million the previous year. But when you delve into their connections and their business development capabilities, they're not going to be able to repeat that in a smaller firm. It's a very different ballgame, which is why I think it's a big decision to make.
Well, I think it's a really balanced view you give. And actually, what I like in what you're saying is, I think it's horses for courses, isn't it? Some people it's like everything in life, isn't it? Some people will do better in a smaller firm. And I know myself, for instance, I am of that ilk. But does that mean that people who do well in bigger firms are any better or worse? Well, no, it's just like you say, some people thrive with structure, and actually those same people could really flounder without structure, and vice versa. But I think your point around that, it being a huge, a really big decision is quite key. And I guess, and the answer to this might just be, they need to think about everything you've just said. And maybe this is questions you ask some of your, the people in your candidates in your process, or maybe the things you look out for. But what are those things someone should almost be thinking about before they move? Is it almost doing a bit of an audit against what you've said? Is there, if there isn't anything else, stop me. But is there anything that you almost guide people, you really need to think about this before making that jump to make sure it's right for you?
Yeah, well, I think there's definitely a checklist against the points I've made. But more generally, you've got to just take a step back and see what you're getting out of your career in the place that you live at the moment. You've got to work out what you want from your career and whether you can see that happening. And if you can't see that happening, you've got to take control. That may mean a move, because life is too short to not be in the right environment. So you've got to actively think about it. I think in the early years of a consulting career, I always say, just go with the flow, right? Get stuck into everything. Enjoy, working on all the projects, even if it may not take you in the direction you think you want to go. Just get involved, because it takes time to work out what you enjoy and what you're good at. So just suck everything up that you can and enjoy it. So once you've made the decision on the direction you want to take your career, what you want to specialize in and how you want to become a senior member of the business, if you can't see that happening in the firm you're with, then you need to make a change, and you need to proactively do that. And I think running through the checklists we've just discussed, many of them will go into a different positive or negative column depending on who you are and the type of environment that suits you, and you need to think about that.
And I think there's a really really powerful point in there, Chris, around, like you said, that take control. I think almost whether it's big or small, decide what you want from your career and make the steps that get you there. I think to what you've highlighted, it could be very easy to blame a big firm for your lack of progress, should you wish. But as you highlighted in your own story and what you mentioned there, of actually it's taking control that lets you get out of that, should that be the route you want to take.
Absolutely. I got a lot out of working in big firms. I really enjoyed it, and I really took a lot from it, and it's the real foundation of my career. They're excellent organizations, and there's a lot of great people there, and many of them are my friends, right? So it can be a great environment. My personal view is that a small business is a better way to deliver value for clients and a better way to do the work you want to do and enjoy it along the way.
So I want to we'll start with the element you mentioned a bit earlier. And this is, again, elements of the business that I guess I'm not as close to in what we do for you on the marketing front, but I think are really interesting and quite unique about that, the Penn model and what you're building. And actually, you mentioned earlier around the ventures side, and also you can take them at the same time or dig into them separately around that giving back as well, because I know another element of what you do is the Penn Foundation. And almost I'd be really interested in what led you to set them up, which one came first, and then for either or for both, what benefits do you find for both yourselves, your teams, and either the businesses you invest in or the causes you support?
So neither came first. They were both fundamental pillars of what we decided to build whenever we made the decision to start Penn. So in our minds, there was always a consulting business, a charitable trust, and a ventures business, or we call it adventures because I talked about the need to have entrepreneurial fun in your life. That was where we wanted to flex our entrepreneurial muscles and use the skills and experience we'd gained in our consulting lives in businesses that were outside of the consulting sphere. So we have invested in businesses with cash or with sweat equity. We've built businesses from scratch, and we've done that with our own time and with time from the Penn team, and we find that that's a big attraction to Penn and a big part of what we talk about as a business, and really interesting for the team. And you can imagine when you've got a space between projects to say, okay, we've got one of the businesses we've set up is a medical billing business, and we needed to do some work to automate some of the processes in there. So one of the team took the time to find out more about automation. We brought a third-party solution in. We automated some of the processes, some of the reconciliations around invoicing, really detailed stuff. But the person in question, Jabran, if you're listening, got a lot out of that. We've been able to talk to clients about our experience in doing that, and we've helped a business that we have set up as well.
And help me, just because you mentioned there around you've got a few businesses. I mean, what does that sort of investment portfolio, for want of a better word, look like? What are those businesses that you've, like say, you set up, founded, funded in the ventures or adventures?
Yeah, wide and varied. So one of them is a medical billing business, and that's one of the ones we set up from scratch. There's another company that we have invested in, and we have a couple of directors on the board in, which is a school procurements business. There's another really exciting business which is called Stable Pharma, which we've invested in through sweat equity, which is about, well, let me tell you the story of this one, actually, because this is interesting. So it turns out, I didn't know this, but it turns out that 60% of all vaccines that are produced in the world are destroyed.
Really?
Yeah, because a vaccine from the point at which it's produced needs to stay within a certain temperature range. So there's a thing called the cold chain, which is the point of production to the point of deployment. A vaccine needs to stay refrigerated. And obviously you're sending these vaccines to parts of the world that have unreliable electricity supplies. And, you're traveling in vans that might get stopped at border checkpoints. And, these are hot countries, so a lot of vaccines are destroyed. And we got involved with a business that has worked out how to desiccate vaccines into powder form. That's actually public IP. That the technique for that is public, but the person that invented that also invented the technique to put the powder from the vaccine onto a small surgical sponge, put that into a medical syringe, and package that and distribute it without the need for it to be refrigerated. So that's a really exciting thing we're involved in.
And sorry, Chris, because I know it's slightly off topic, but it's fascinating, and
that's okay.
I know as much about pharma as the work I've done with your team, but how does that then? Or you just add water? So probably a terrible example. Is it frankly like a medical pot noodle? You add water to it and you're ready to go? Is that?
Yeah. So you suck up water into the syringe. The desiccated vaccine dissolves in the water, and it then is deployed, injected into whoever needs it.
Amazing.
Which is really exciting. So we went through a crowdfunding process last year, which some of the team got involved in. We've raised the money, and now we are going through the process to build the production of these things so we can do human trials next year, and then we'll see where that goes. So those are wide and varied things that we've got involved in, but We did that, as I say, that was a big pillar of what we tried to what we have set up at Penn. So the consulting business, the charitable trust, and the adventures. So back to the charitable trust, which I kind of hesitate to mention in too much depth because we've always said we don't want to use it as a tool to generate PR from, right? This is always something that was just at the heart of Penn. We wanted to give money back to people that need it more than ourselves. So we've set up a charitable trust and we support 3 different charities that all help children. So a charity called the Renaissance Foundation that finds kids in schools that are often young carers or people that have taken the wrong direction in life that need help, and they run certain projects with these kids to give them a purpose and direction in life and see some great results with it. We work with a youth club in London Bridge area called Downside Fisher, which provides a safe space for kids in the area. We've helped them refurbish their youth club, their gym. We've helped them put new lighting into their gym. Every year they take a group away to do an outward bounds type activities, and their minibus was falling apart and they couldn't do what they wanted to do. So we've donated a minibus to them.
Wow. And
we work with Lord's Taverners as well, which is a much bigger charity that helps children through sporting projects, mainly based around cricket. We support lots of different charities. So we give, every person at Penn gets £500 a year to donate to a charity of their choice, which is lovely. So we get all these messages back into base camp saying, from whoever scout group or the local primary school football team where we give them kit or whoever it might be.
And that's just so I'm clear, because that's not matched funding. That's just, here's your 500 for the year. Do with it as you wish. Is that
absolutely? Yeah, it needs to go to a charity.
So that's the only rule. You've got to give it to a charity.
Yeah. You the charity of your choice. And we will match funding as well. So if someone is running the marathon, or which a couple of us did last year, or we are a team of us is swimming across the channel this year, we'll match the funding that people raise. And last year we had a lovely milestone actually, where we were able to celebrate giving our 500,000th pound to charity.
Wow! So
little old Penn, has given £500,000 and counting to charity, which is, I'm very proud of that. We're very proud of that, and it's a big part of the business.
Well, it's, I think, like you say, it's an amazing milestone. So well done on it. And I guess to that point around the culture and living those values that you set out, those both examples there, they're different, but they talk to exactly the same thing of letting people have that, have those interests around what they do, and also lets you share the positive benefits of consulting, both from the ventures side in terms of sharing that knowledge to grow those ventures, but also on the charitable side. And actually, things like, I'm sure someone will say we do this, but I've not heard anyone else who gives quite like you say that, just here's £500, give it to whoever you see fit. And like you say, you must get some amazing, the local under 11s football team or the local scout group. And I guess it like you said with that minibus, I mean, you sometimes forget that consulting, by virtue of what it is the numbers that people throw around for projects and for fees and that clients will buy are very, most of them will have 5, if not 6, if not 7 zeros at the end of them. Yeah. And actually, like you highlight, some of those, a minibus or even just a few £100 for a kit can actually have a huge impact and actually shows the social good you can do through a business like yours as well.
Yeah, yes, we're very lucky, to be working in the careers that we are, when you think of what some other people go through. So putting something back is really important. It's fundamental.
So Chris, I think as with all of these interviews, we could keep talking about a whole host of things, and not least, frankly, what we just talked about around the different charities you've given to, and also, frankly, the different businesses that you're investing in, because some of those things sound fantastic, and like you highlight, I guess, also help demonstrate to your clients that you practice what you preach, which is a brilliant thing as well. Last 2 questions for today then, and these are, I know you've listened to a couple of these interviews yourself, so you probably know what's coming, but for those who maybe this is their first interview, I mean, I hope the whole team have listened to all of the back catalogue, but you might be the first one to prompt them into listening to the show. So the first question is about books. And I know we had a good conversation actually just before the recording about podcasts and different podcasts that you listen to, I listen to, and other books as well. So This, I always say, is books, but doesn't have to be. So it could be resources. But it's very much, it's to get a guide on the things that have helped you and have helped others by virtue of you passing it on that knowledge. And so the way I usually ask the question is, what is the book or books, but as I say, take it as you wish, that you find yourself giving or recommending to others most, or have had the most impact on you?
Yeah, so I'll give you two, and they're not management books. I know most people give you management books, but that's not the direction I'm going to go. So the first one, which I actually gave to someone as recently as last week, is Papillon. Have you ever read Papillon?
I have heard the name, but forgive me. Remind me the plot. If it's fiction.
No, it's real life. So it's a biography of a guy called Henry Charrier, who's a small time criminal who grew up in Paris, and he got convicted of a crime that he didn't commit, although he did profess to being a petty criminal, but he didn't commit this crime, which is a murder, and he was sent to French Guiana, to a prison colony in French Guiana. It's just a fascinating book because the story is what this guy went through to effectively escaped a number of different prisons until he was sent to the prison that nobody had escaped from before, which he then escaped from. But I'm very interested in the mindset that you need to have to succeed in whatever it is that you're doing, whether in a consulting sense it's on a difficult project or solving a difficult problem, or if it's in your personal life or in bigger business, the mindset that you need to succeed. And I'm really interested in how far people can push their body and push their minds when they have that right focus. And I just think this whole book, I would really urge you to read it, is just an amazing story of what someone can achieve if they've got one focused goal in mind. Nothing's going to stop them. It's an incredible story of endurance.
As you were describing the plot, so I thought the name sounded familiar, and I actually think I watched the film adaptation.
Yeah.
On my way either to or from Japan.
Oh, really? There you go.
So
last year. Well, I actually haven't. I've never seen the film. I don't want to ruin the book.
It's with all films, isn't it? You should never. If you love the book, you probably should never watch the film.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the point you highlight there, and the moral, regardless of sort of the subject matter, that resilience to keep going and keep persevering, because it's quite amazing the lengths. Firstly, how savage those prison islands were.
But the lengths that he had to go to escape it.
Yeah.
Which leads me on to the second book, actually. So I'm interested in general about human endurance.
Okay.
And I participate in a few endurance events myself to kind of see how far, the human body can go. And another book I would recommend is called The Crossing, which is by James Cracknell and Ben Fogle.
Okay.
And so James Cracknell, famous Olympic rower, Ben Fogle, famous for being stuck on an island on his own or with a community of people and not a rower, decided to row across the Atlantic, which captured my imagination because it ends in Antigua, which is where my wife's family are from, and it's somewhere that we spend a lot of time in. But it's an amazing book. First of all, it's very interesting. They write each chapter in sequence. So Ben writes one, then James writes one, and they go through. So you see the different perspective from each one. And the fascinating point, I'm not giving anything away, right? In fact, they do get to the end.
They make it to Antigua.
And they won the race. But the really fascinating thing is there's a real lesson in incentives and motivation in humans, because what happened was when they got to the final few days, it became clear that they were going to win the race. With it, they still had a few days to row, but they knew they were going to win it because they were far enough ahead of the last person. And at that stage, James Cracknell's body gave up. So his goal in this whole endeavor was to win the race. And as soon as he had won the race, his body had achieved the goal, and he actually became very ill, and he fell apart. Ben Fogle, whose goal was to get to Antigua, ended up being the person that got them to Antigua. So the Olympic rower, pushed himself so hard on his goal. Once he knew he had achieved his goal, his body gave up, whereas Ben's took him the whole way. A really interesting insight into how motivations and incentives work.
And it's an amazingly powerful point, isn't it? And there's, if we had more time, I'm sure we could.
I'm sure we could talk about
dig
that
into
for a long
that.
time.
But I guess it is so. I'd be interested, and it tees us up for the next question. I'm going to touch on it. I'm not going to presume you saw it. You may have seen it at the firms you had before, and actually, you may give this advice to the. You mentioned how some of the partnership now are partners who have been promoted through the firm.
Yeah,
and I think that's a really interesting question. Well, you tell me if it's an interesting question. Of, I think in consulting, a bit to that analogy, getting to partner can sometimes be seen as winning the race, and actually, your career is some people say it's the start of the next part of your career. It's not an end. It's a different start point or a point and almost to exactly that story. How do you guide people here, or what do you say to those junior partners who have made it? They've won the race. How do you advise people to keep that energy in the tank so you're ready for that next race and you can keep that endurance going and focus for the next part of your career?
I think the focus shifts. So the job is very similar in terms of delivering for clients. By the time you're an associate partner at Penn, you're already running client projects. You're already selling work to clients. You're proving you can operate in the mold of a partner. But things change when you become a partner, because your role then is to do the business development, the lifeblood of the business, to do the business development for Penn. And you're working alongside a group of people whose responsibility it is to keep the business running and growing and find the right work that we can do. And that's a big responsibility. So I think part of it is introducing people to that in the right way, which is why we have quite a structured progression role before partner, and we spend a lot of time with our associate partners on that. But there's kind of recognizing that you put a lot of pressure on yourself when you first get to partner, because you don't want to be the one letting the team down. And so I don't want to mention support again, but it is so important in Penn. They need the support to grow into that role. Don't know if I've answered that question very well.
No, well, I think it does. And I guess it's in the example you gave there with the sort of with the crossing it's exactly that, but it's much more pronounced because there's two of them. But actually, to that story, and I've not read it, but I can only assume from what you said, they wouldn't have won the race if they didn't have that support. Because, like you said, James's body had collapsed.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And I realise I probably shouldn't have asked it, but it teed me up so nicely for it. I wanted to dig into that because it's an important thing and something that I know from my days in consulting sort of saw some people struggle with that transition.
Yeah.
And, it's a fascinating area. I think people always think it's the earlier grades that are the challenging ones, but I always think that's the transition. Well,
no, I agree with that. I think if your aim in life is to become a partner, that's a mistake, I think, because it's the start of the next journey. And that's really when the pressure does ramp up, and there's different aspects to consulting life, different tensions that come into play at that stage. And it is, in a way, learning a whole new way to go about your business. I don't know, I always thought in the big four firms I could see people that made partner and they kind of disappeared for a while. You didn't see them, and I wasn't really sure what was going on. But I now know that they were in panic mode, running around the market trying to find work. So people definitely need the support, not just to get into the partner grade, but to flourish at that level.
And I think that brings us nicely onto I kick myself, but I'm glad we went into it there. And it might make the answer to this one shorter, or it might just reinforce some of the points that we've highlighted throughout. And so the last question, and again, I'm sure you're expecting this one, but more for our listeners, is it's to give your advice to people in those different levels. So we just touched on that, sort of the people who have transitioned to partner, and the three people that I'll be really interested to get your advice for are actually people just slightly below those. So the question is, what one piece of advice would you give to each of these three people? And those three people are somebody who is at graduate level. So, where you were, you've done your 3-day course, you've got your graduate scheme, you just come in. Your second is someone who, in sort of a big four partners, you'd call a manager grade. And then the third is that person just before, and it might be, again, just the recap of what we just touched on, but that person just before partner who's approaching partner, and maybe, given your own circumstances, maybe they're deciding whether they should follow that partnership route within a firm or they should go out on their own. And as I say, the question is quite simply, what one piece of advice would you give to each of those three people?
Yeah, so for the young consultant, and first of all, yeah, I'm not sure how qualified I am to give advice, but here's kind of my view of the world for it. For the young consultant, just get involved. Just get involved in everything. Say yes to everything. Get involved in as wide a variety of different types of projects as you can, because you don't know what you're going to enjoy and you don't know what you're going to be good at. Keep your eyes open and your head up. So it's too easy sometimes to get sucked into the detail of projects. Think about why the project's happening, why the business that you're working for needs to make the change it's trying to change. Think about, what you're trying to achieve as a project rather than the particular task you're working on that day or that week. I would say don't panic about whether you're doing the right types of jobs or the cool jobs or the sexy jobs. That'll all come. Just enjoy it and have a great time and get involved in everything and learn as much as you can from the bad projects, the ones that don't go quite the way you want them to go, as you do from the good projects. That's one I'd give to the young consultant. I think the second one was kind of 5 years in.
Yeah. I've started saying manager, if only because I used to say 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
But and maybe it's just because of how long I've been out of sort of consulting in terms of being in a firm. But I think that's probably very good going to be a manager. So I don't want to do people down, but take it where you almost the place that you see as most poignant. So it could be where you were when you left, or
the 5, 6 years in, whenever
exactly.
I left before. I think now is the time you've got to take control of your destiny. You whether you like it or not, you're going to have to make a decision about what direction you want to take your career. Do you want to develop some kind of deep subject matter expertise and be the person that sells work because you're known as the person that knows everything there is to know about a particular subject? And if there's a project going on in that area, you're the person that needs to be involved. Are you going to be a kind of a doer, just really good at getting stuff done, and therefore clients will ask for you whenever they've got a problem because they know that's the person that just can deliver at all costs, no matter what the type of project it is? Or are you going to be the more business development driven, knocking on doors, building relationships? Which direction are you going to take? And then take control of your career and make sure you get the career development support you need to take you there. And I think whatever direction you go on, and I would actually say this to the younger consultants, I say this to people all the time, I wish someone had grabbed me by the lapels whenever I was younger and given me a good shake and said, focus on building a network early in your career. And, we spend a lot of time on this at Penn, which is not too early, never too early to start building a network. And that starts with what we call meaningful networking. And then that'll develop into business development in the future.
And sorry, just because you mentioned it with the air quotes, what for you is meaningful network? Because I think it's a really important point. But I'm interested to get how you advise people on what that looks like.
So what I mean for that is we're not talking about networking to make friends and have a few beers or a coffee every now and again, right? You need to be precise about it. You need to build a routine around it, and you need to record it and track it. That's the meaningful part of it. You're not trying to sell £1 million projects at that stage, but what you are trying to do is develop a group of people in your chosen sector or industry that you know well. And clients that you work with can shoot up organizations very quickly with just their depending on how the company restructures or what they get involved in, they can shoot up and become a decision maker very quickly. And in that case, you might have worked with them on a project 6 years ago when you were both analysts on a project or whatever it might have been. And you don't want to be the person that phones them up and says, oh, remember me? We worked together 6 years ago, and now you're an important decision-making client, and I'd like to come and buy you a coffee. You want to be the one that's on text saying, well done, I knew you'd get that promotion. Lunch is on you because I bought last time. It'd be great to catch up because I want to tell you what's been going on in my world and see what's going on with you. So don't underestimate the importance of that.
Well, and I think it's a really powerful point, that, like you say, that meaningful part, and both doing it with purpose and also keeping track of it. I think it's, like you say, I remember when I started my career, you're told to just go and meet people, and to an extent, that is a good thing. But actually, at some point, that needs to turn into, like you say, you need to keep track of that. And I guess I think it's a really important piece you mentioned as well. Of don't just because you met someone 6 years ago think that you're still best friends, or you have a relationship in a work context. I think particularly with things like LinkedIn, I think some people think if you're connected with someone, you're going to be connected forever.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, that important.
That's a good point.
Like you've highlighted there, and it's largely where the success at Penn has come from. I guess of those networks and those meaningful contacts build. The trees sort of, if you think of them like flowers, they start as seeds, but if you're an analyst in one of these consulting firms and they're an analyst in a client organization, by the time you're a partner, well, if they've done all right,
they may well have problems that need solving and could do with their help.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And it's there, start as early as you can. Have fun with it, make the mistakes early, and by the time that it really needs to be part of your, career progression, you'll be well equipped.
Definitely. And so then the last, and apologies, I jumped in as you were explaining it, but so the last person, and this again because I think we touched on just before your advice for those people who make partners. So if there's anything that you wanted to add, do, but I'd almost be fascinated in if we frame that piece around the people like yourself when you and the founders went out. What advice would you give to anyone who's deciding whether they're going to stay as a partner in a firm, be it somewhere like Penn, be it a larger firm, or whether they're deciding, right, is it time to go out on my own?
Well, if someone's deciding to go out on their own, I would say do it. So my view on this is that life is about minimizing regrets. So if you can get to the end of your life with as few regrets as possible, I think you've done a good job. And if you are seriously thinking about starting a business or starting out on your own or making a ballsy decision like that, give it a go. Do it. Don't be the person in 10 years' time who looks back and thinks, I really wish I'd started my own thing. Go and do it. You will learn a hell of a lot. It may not grow into something, you may not make it, but you'll learn a hell of a lot and you'll have some fun along the way. And, what's the worst that can happen? Okay? It doesn't work out. You pack up your bags and work out what to do next with your life. It's not going to be the end of the world. So give it a go.
Well, Chris, I love that. And I love that minimizing regrets. I think such a powerful frame, because it completely changes how you look at life. And like you say, what's the worst that can happen with it? This has been a great conversation, Chris. And it's been nice I know obviously we have conversations in the work that we do together, but it's been great to actually sit down and have this chat with you and learn things that I didn't know, and some really powerful things in there as well. So thank you very much. For anyone who has listened to this, wants to find out more about yourself, more about Penn, maybe they, from what you're saying, they're looking to make that move you did and are looking for that boutique firm to be the place that they make that jump. Where can they get in touch with you? Where would you point them to?
Yeah, you can contact me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way to get hold of me. If you are thinking about a career at a small consulting business and Penn sounds like the place for you, then head over to our website and you'll find what roles we're searching for at the moment. You'll be able to apply.
Fantastic. Well, I will put both of those in the show notes so that anyone who's listening can go and find them. And all that's left to say, Chris, is thank you very much and all the best for the rest of your week.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I've really enjoyed that.
Thanks a lot.
All the best.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Climb in Consulting podcast. If you did, I would be very grateful if you could leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcast platform of choice, whichever one you may be using. And please also share this with anyone that you think could benefit from hearing today's interview. If you want to get in touch or give me any feedback about the podcast, please feel free to drop me an email. It's nick@climbinconsulting.com, and I look forward to hearing from you.